Have you ever felt that you carry something inside you that you can't explain? As if there is a spiritual mark that separates you from the rest of the world? Maybe you are part of the 144,000 chosen. And believe me, this changes everything. It's no coincidence that you're hearing this message right now. It's part of your spiritual awakening. Have you ever noticed that some people seem to be born carrying an invisible weight? While most live on automatic, there are those who feel a constant emptiness, a youth without peace that cannot be explained with logic. The curious thing is that many call this weakness, but what if it's exactly the opposite? What if this pain is the sign of a divine calling, reserved only for chosen souls? What no one tells you is that the hidden pains, the feeling of not belonging, and this almost unbearable spiritual sensitivity are actually evidence of a spiritual imprint. We are not talking about a common destiny. We are talking about the 144,000 chosen ones, young people and adults who carry within themselves a spiritual mission that goes far beyond the routine of working, paying bills, and waiting for life to pass. And here's the counterintuitive truth. This restlessness isn't a curse, it's preparation. It is spiritual awakening happening, even if you have not realized it yet. Every sleepless night, every silent tear, every inexplicable emptiness is part of a greater purpose. Few understand, but those who feel it know. Now tell me sincerely, do you also feel that you do not belong to this world? If this question echoes within you, it may be a sign that your journey is bigger than you think. Comment below on the word chosen, and let's see how many souls are awakening to their true mission. There are those who say that youth should be synonymous with lightness, but for many chosen souls, the reality is quite different. Silence never comes, the inner voices cross and create an endless war within the mind. This invisible conflict reveals hidden pains that no one notices, but that are part of a greater purpose. It is as if every thought is a warning that there is something beyond ordinary life. This constant state is actually a harbinger of a divine calling. When a young person feels that he lives in permanent restlessness, it is a sign that his soul carries a spiritual imprint. This mark is not visible to ordinary eyes, but manifests itself in feelings of not belonging and in a youth without peace. Many try to escape from this, immersing themselves in fleeting distractions, but soon realize that the emptiness is still there, firm and silent. It is precisely in this discomfort that the strength to seek deeper answers is born. Those who try to ignore this inner fire end up being consumed by the feeling of emptiness. Take, for example, that young person who always feels out of place at parties, even surrounded by friends. He smiles on the outside, but on the inside he feels that something is missing. This discrepancy between what you show and what you feel is a clear sign of spiritual sensitivity. And although it seems like a burden, it is precisely this discomfort that prepares you to see truths that others do not. It is a pain that deep down points to spiritual awakening. These internal battles often intensify at dawn, when the world seems to be asleep, but the mind continues to boil. Many report that in these moments deep reflections arise, almost as if they were whispers coming from a greater plan. It is at this time that one realizes that the 144,000 chosen are not ordinary, as they carry within themselves the spiritual mission of illuminating paths. This call does not come all at once, but pulsates like a constant reminder. Each insomnia, each anguish, is part of the polishing of this soul. And although it may seem like punishment, this youth marked by inner conflicts is a hidden gift. It is the silent preparation that will give clarity for the future. Those who feel this, in fact, are already being separated for something far beyond routine. This inner fire is just the beginning, because soon comes the even deeper feeling of not belonging to this ordinary world. From an early age, many realize that they do not fit into the traditional molds of life. It's as if they were always out of step, dancing to a song that others can't hear. This sense of not belonging can be painful, but it is also a clear sign of a spiritual imprint. For the chosen souls, this difference is not a defect, it is identity. Youth without peace is often the reflection of this disconnect between the outside world and the frequency of the soul. This feeling can appear in the small things of everyday life. While most are satisfied with superficial conversations, those who are spiritually sensitive feel the need for deep dialogues. It's not that I despise lightness, but there is a hunger for greater meaning, and this inevitably causes distancing as not everyone can stand such intensity. This loneliness, which seems cruel, is actually part of spiritual awakening. It is the divine call, manifesting itself in a silent way. Think of someone who in the midst of a group of friends always seems to be somewhere else. The body is there, but the mind wanders through reflections on the greater purpose of existence. This feeling of displacement is not a social failure, but proof that this person is part of the 144,000 chosen. The ordinary world was never meant to hold her. The sooner this is accepted, the easier the journey becomes. After all, those who were born with a spiritual mission cannot settle for the trivial. It is common for this feeling to also bring hidden pain. The young person looks around and does not understand how others settle for so little. This nonconformity may seem arrogant in the eyes of some, but in fact it is just the refusal to accept a life without depth. Here's the secret. Not belonging is the compass that points to different paths. The stranger the young person feels, the closer the revelation of his spiritual awakening is. This mismatch with the outside world can be seen as a preparation. It is as if the universe is molding the soul so as not to be bound by social ties. Instead of seeing it as a curse, it is necessary to understand it as a blessing in disguise. The emptiness that bothers you is the same that makes room for something greater to occupy your interior. This process will only deepen, because the wounds of youth play a fundamental role. They will be transformed into purpose. The pains of youth are often seen as heavy burdens, but in fact they hide a secret role in the formation of chosen souls. Every disappointment, every fall, every sleepless night is like a divine chisel shaping the essence. What for many is just suffering, for the 144,000 chosen is preparation for the spiritual mission. It is not about bad luck, but about stoning. Life does not waste tears. Each one of them has a function in spiritual awakening. Many young people carry hidden pains that no one suspects. The smile they offer to the world is often just a mask to disguise silent battles. But deep down, these wounds are proof that there is a greater purpose in motion. When the soul is trained in pain, it learns to recognize the pain of others with a rare compassion. This is what sets it apart and makes it capable of fulfilling the divine call that is to come. Imagine someone who suffered rejection as a teenager, always feeling on the sidelines. That same person, years later, becomes someone capable of welcoming the world's outcasts. Pain that seemed like a punishment becomes a tool for healing. This is how the spiritual paradox works. The more intense the wound, the greater the ability to transform pain into light. This is the true spiritual mark that identifies those who were born with a mission. The process is not easy, and precisely for this reason, few understand. While some despair in the face of falls, others choose to look beyond the surface. Youth without peace, in this sense, is a kind of secret school. It is there that resilience, patience, and the courage to follow even when nothing makes sense. This quiet, though painful learning, prepares the chosen ones for something that is still hidden. Therefore, each pain has a function. Each wound is an invisible brick in the construction of the greater purpose. Even when it seems that nothing makes sense, there is a greater intelligence driving the process. The wound is the door, and the purpose is what awaits on the other side. But to cross it is necessary to bear the weight of spiritual sensitivity, which will reveal itself even more intensely. Those who carry a spiritual mark feel the world differently. It's not just exaggerated emotion. It's as if every vibration around it penetrates deep into the heart. The chosen souls cannot shield themselves against the suffering of others, because their spiritual mission already pulsates in them from an early age. This spiritual sensitivity can be heavy, but it is also the greatest gift. After all, only those who feel deeply are able to transform pain into healing. This hypersensitivity often manifests itself in commonplaces. A young man enters an environment and, even without words, notices the heavy atmosphere that is in the air. While others remain distracted, he absorbs that energy and spends hours reflecting on what he felt. This weight is not imagination. It is part of spiritual awakening, a constant reminder that there is something greater happening behind the curtains of reality. Many wonder, why am I so sorry while others seem to live in peace? The answer lies in the divine call. It is no coincidence that these young people live a youth without peace. This restlessness is born because they have been prepared for something that goes beyond ordinary life. It is a silent training, which teaches to see the invisible and to understand hidden pains that the world insists on hiding. Of course, it is not always easy to deal with this intensity. Sometimes everything seems too much: injustice, the pain of others, one's own inner anxieties. It is as if living is carrying a constant weight. But here's the secret. This weight is precisely what shapes spiritual strength. It is what enables the 144,000 chosen to see the greater purpose that is reserved for their lives. This sensitivity, which many try to erase or control, is not a defect. It is the differential that makes each chosen soul unique. What seems like weakness is actually the engine of a life of impact. But this same sensitivity at some point raises deep questions. And it is at this point that the endless search for answers that seem to be never within reach begins. When spiritual sensitivity intensifies, a restlessness is born that does not remain silent. Chosen souls cannot be satisfied with superficial explanations. Questions arise all the time. What is my higher purpose? Why do I feel like I don't belong in this world? What is the reason for these hidden pains? This constant search is a sign of the spiritual awakening in progress. It is not a common curiosity, but the hunger of those who already carry within themselves a divine call. While many are satisfied with predictable routines, the 144,000 chosen realize that ordinary life is never enough. Work, pay bills, repeat cycles, all this seems empty to those who were born with spiritual mission. The heart asks for more, as if it knew that there is a truth hidden beyond the visible. This dissatisfaction, far from being weakness, is the engine that drives the soul toward purpose. In practice, this search can manifest itself in several ways. Some delve into spirituality books, others explore ancient philosophies or diverse religions. There are those who venture into inner journeys through meditation, or even into external journeys, seeking a piece of themselves elsewhere. The curious thing is that no matter how hard they try to find answers, the feeling of incompleteness remains. This happens because what they seek is not outside, but inside. This emptiness is like a spiritual compass, always pointing beyond the obvious. It's uncomfortable but essential. Youth without peace is not a mistake of fate. It is a sign that something much greater is being prepared. Each question that does not find an answer is, in fact, an invitation to delve even deeper into the mystery of existence. This plunge, as painful as it may seem, will inevitably lead to a period of breakdown and revelation. And it is precisely in this process that the young person begins to realize that the answers do not arrive ready-made, but arise through inner transformation. The search, which seemed eternal, becomes a path of polishing. It is as if the universe says, "First break your illusions, then you will see your true essence." And it is at this breaking point that true spiritual awakening takes place. There comes a time when everything that seemed solid begins to crumble. Certainties crumble, plans fail, relationships break down. To many, this sounds like bad luck or punishment, but to the chosen souls, it is just the natural process of stoning. The period of breakdown is painful, yes, but it is also the gateway to spiritual awakening. Without this rupture, the true essence would never be revealed. Youth without peace often reach their peak in this period. The young man finds himself surrounded by loss, emptiness, and even more intense questioning. It can be the loss of a friendship, a love that didn't work out, or even the feeling that nothing else makes sense. But each of these falls functions as a divine call. This is not where you should put down roots. It is as if life says that the soul was made for something much greater. It is at this point that many report transformative experiences. One day, after so much suffering, something changes. Pain ceases to be an enemy and becomes a master. This is the true spiritual awakening, when the person realizes that all that suffering hid a preparation. The 144,000 chosen ones go through this process intensely, as they need to be ready to carry light in the midst of darkness. A practical example: think about those who lost everything they considered important, and yet, When they look back, they recognize that it was precisely this loss that made room for a new life. It is like the vase that breaks to be remade in a more beautiful and resistant way. Breaking does not destroy, he reveals. And each chosen soul carries this spiritual mark to remind us that the new beginning is part of the mission. This cycle of ruin and rebirth, however painful, sets the stage for the next stage. Because in the midst of pain and loneliness, the recognition of the divine call is born. And that's when life begins to take on a new meaning, totally different from everything that has been experienced until then. After the break, an almost magical moment arises, the realization that nothing was in vain. The tears that once seemed useless now reveal their function. Each hidden pain, each heavy silence, each feeling of not belonging was part of a preparation. It is at this moment that the soul recognizes the divine call. It is not just an idea, but a certainty that echoes in the heart, as if something greater had finally revealed itself. This spiritual awakening often happens in the midst of loneliness. When the noise of the world falls silent and only the essence itself remains, clarity arises. It's as if an inner voice says, "Now you understand. Now you're ready." The 144,000 chosen go through this moment in an unmistakable way. There are no fireworks, but there is a different deep peace that is born from the understanding of a greater purpose. Many describe this recognition as a relief. The weight of youth without peace begins to make sense as the young person realizes that he was not lost. He was being molded. It's like someone who finds a missing piece in a puzzle. Life takes shape, and even the deepest wounds become part of a story that needs to be told. This is the spiritual mark that distinguishes the chosen ones. They don't just suffer, they transform. An example? Think of someone who has always felt empty, but suddenly when helping someone else realizes that their pain has made them more human and stronger. At that moment, the divine call ceases to be a distant concept and becomes a real experience. It is the moment when the person understands that their spiritual mission is not only about themselves, but about serving, enlightening, and guiding. This recognition is not the end, but the beginning of something even greater. Because from it, the awareness is born that there is a collective task in motion. And it is exactly here that the supreme sign begins to be revealed. The mission of the 144,000 chosen, scattered around the world, carrying the same light. The moment comes when everything connects. Youth without peace, hidden pain, the feeling of not belonging. None of this was in vain. These signs were only proof of a spiritual imprint engraved from the beginning. The spiritual awakening reveals that the 144,000 chosen ones are not here by chance. They were called to carry a spiritual mission amidst the shadows of the world. This divine call is not light. It asks for surrender, courage, and the willingness to live for a greater purpose. While many seek only to survive, the chosen souls are called to live intensely, guiding others by example. Turbulent youth becomes the root of the strength that now flourishes. Each tear shed in the silence of the night becomes fuel to illuminate those who walk in the dark. In practice, this mission manifests itself in simple but profound attitudes. It can be the young person who inspires colleagues not to give up, the adult who takes the time to listen to those who suffer in silence, or even the one who shares words that touch hearts. No matter the size of the action, when guided by spiritual sensitivity, even the most discreet gesture becomes a ray of light. That is the true power of chosen souls. The curious thing is that those who carry this mission never feel completely ready. The feeling of emptiness remains, but now as a reminder that there is always more to do. This constant discomfort is part of the divine calling, which prevents the chosen ones from settling down. After all, they were destined to impact not only their own lives, but the fate of many others. And so, the spiritual mark that seemed like a curse turns out to be a blessing. The weight that once crushed becomes momentum. Youth without peace shows that in fact there has always been a greater purpose driving each step. And it's just the beginning, because recognizing the mission is only the first step. Living that mission is the real challenge that lies ahead. Now that you have understood that youth without peace, hidden pains, and the feeling of not belonging were not punishment, but a divine calling. Tell me, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Will you continue to ignore your spiritual imprint? Or will you accept that you are part of the chosen 144,000? Only you can decide whether your spiritual sensitivity will be a burden or fuel to fulfill your greater purpose. Reflect. How many times have you tried to silence this emptiness and yet it came back stronger? This does not happen by chance. Spiritual awakening does not ask for permission, it simply arrives and transforms everything. And if you're listening to this right now, maybe it's just the push you needed to take on your spiritual mission. The question is, are you ready to stop running away and live what you were born to live? Are you ready to turn pain into purpose? Because believe me, there is no chance. There is a call. If this story is already touching your heart, comment below the word light to show that you also feel this divine call. And of course, if this content resonates with you, consider leaving that super thanks because it helps to spread this message even more and reach other chosen souls who also need to awaken. And at the end of this journey, I want you to remember one thing. Your youth without peace was never a mistake, but a sign that you were born for a greater purpose. So, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because this spiritual walk is not meant to be lived alone. After all, those who carry light do not only walk by themselves but illuminate the path of everyone around.